The crisp autumn air greeted me as I stepped out of my car, the familiar scent of freshly fallen leaves filling my lungs. Glancing up at the quaint two-story house where I had spent countless childhood summers, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. Little did I know that this unexpected return to my hometown would unravel a web of deceit that threatened to tear my family apart. "Lenore?" The gruff voice of my grandfather Gregor broke the silence. "What in God's name are you doing here?" I mustered a weak smile, trying to mask the turmoil bubbling within me. "It's a long story, Grandpa." His brow furrowed as he studied me intently, those piercing blue eyes seemingly peering into my soul. "Well, you'd better come inside and start talking." As we settled into the living room, the memories of simpler times flooded back, but my mind quickly snapped back to the present, the weight of my recent misfortunes pressing heavily upon me. My voice faltered, the words catching in my throat. "I lost everything, Grandpa." Gregor's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. "What do you mean? You lost everything?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the onslaught of questions. "My business partner in New York. He betrayed me, swindled me out every last penny I had." Gregor's eyes narrowed, his skepticism palpable. "And how exactly did this happen?" As the details spilled forth, each revelation more damning than the last, I could see the disbelief etched across my grandfather's face. The way he looked at me, it was as if he didn't recognize the person sitting before him. "So you're telling me that this snake conned you out of your life savings?" Gregor shook his head, his voice laced with disappointment. "I thought I raised you smarter than that, girl." His words stung like a slap to the face. But I couldn't blame him. The weight of my naivety crushed me, the shame burning hot in my cheeks. "I know, Grandpa. I know." My voice trembled, the tears threatening to spill over. But I swear, I had no idea he was capable of such deceit. Gregor's gaze softened ever so slightly, but the skepticism remained. "Well, you're here now. We'll figure this mess out, one way or another." As he rose from his chair, a heavy silence hung in the air, unspoken questions lingering like ghosts. Little did we know, this was merely the beginning of a much darker truth that would shake the very foundations of our family. The weight of Gregor's words hung heavy in the air as we sat in silence, the ticking of the grandfather clock echoing through the room like a metronome counting down the seconds until the next bombshell dropped. Little did I know, the revelations that followed would shatter what little remained of my trust in those closest to me. Gregor cleared his throat, his expression grave. "Lenore, there's something I need to tell you." I steeled myself, bracing for yet another harsh truth to come crashing down upon me. "You know about the inheritance your grandma left you, right?" he began, his voice low and somber. I nodded, my brow furrowing in confusion. "Of course, you've always taken care of managing it for me." Gregor's jaw clenched, and he averted his gaze as if struggling to find the right words. "That's just it, kid. I haven't been managing it, not for years now." My heart skipped a beat, a knot forming in the pit of my stomach. "What are you saying, Grandpa?" He sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping with the weight of whatever burden he carried. "Your Uncle Hal, he's been handling the finances, and it seems he's been helping himself to more than his fair share." The floor seemed to drop out from beneath me as the weight of his words sank in. Uncle Hal, the man I had looked up to as a child, the one who had always seemed so generous and caring, had been stealing from me all along. How is that possible?" I stammered, my hands trembling. "Why would he do such a thing?" Gregor shook his head, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. "I don't know, kid. I trusted him, too. Gave him full control over the accounts years ago when my health started failing." The sense of betrayal cut deep, like a knife twisting in my gut. Not only had I been swindled by a business partner, but now it seemed my own flesh and blood had been deceiving me as well. "Do you have any idea how much is missing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Gregor's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Enough to make my blood boil, that's for damn sure." In that moment, a fire ignited within me, a burning desire for justice and retribution. Uncle Hal had not only stolen from me, but he had violated the sacred trust of family, and for that he would pay dearly. As Gregor laid out the evidence he had uncovered, the suspicious transactions, the lavish purchases, the blatant disregard for our financial well-being, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I would not rest until every last penny was accounted for, and Uncle Hal was held responsible for his despicable actions. With a steely determination etched across my face, I met Gregor's gaze. "Don't worry, Grandpa. We're going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes." The sense of betrayal burned like acid, eating away at my insides, as Mom and I pored over the financial records Gregor had uncovered. With each damning transaction, each suspicious investment, the full extent of Uncle Hal's deceit became glaringly apparent. "I can't believe this," Mom muttered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "How could he do this to his own family?" I shook my head, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. "Greed, Mom, pure and simple." The paper trail spoke volumes, painting a vivid picture of Uncle Hal's lavish lifestyle. The luxury cars, the extravagant vacations, the ostentatious home renovations, all funded by the very inheritance meant to secure our family's future. "Look at these investment portfolios," I said, sliding a stack of documents across the table. "He's been gambling our money away on high-risk ventures, chasing get-rich-quick schemes." Mom's eyes widened as she scanned the pages, her expression darkening with each line she read. "This is reckless, irresponsible, unforgivable." A heavy silence fell between us, the weight of Uncle Hal's betrayal hanging thick in the air. We had trusted him implicitly, never suspecting that the very man tasked with safeguarding our legacy was systematically dismantling it from the inside. "We have to stop him," I said, my voice low and resolute. "We have to make him pay for what he's done." Mom's eyes met mine, a steely determination reflecting back at me. "Absolutely, but we need ironclad proof, something he can't weasel his way out of." As we strategized late into the night, the path forward became clear. We would have to set a trap, lure Uncle Hal into a false sense of security, and catch him in the act. It was a risky gambit, but one we were willing to take to ensure justice was served. In the days that followed, we meticulously gathered evidence, documenting every transaction, every financial maneuver Uncle Hal had made. The stack of incriminating paperwork grew thicker with each passing hour, a damning testament to the depths of his greed and deceit. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. We arranged a family dinner under the guise of clearing the air, inviting Uncle Hal under the pretense of reconciliation. Little did he know, we had laid the perfect trap, one that would expose his misdeeds and leave him with nowhere to hide. As he strode through the door, a smarmy grin plastered across his face, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. This was it, the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally confront the man who had betrayed us all. "Lenore, darling," Uncle Hal exclaimed, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "It's so good to see you." I forced a smile, steeling myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. "Uncle Hal, we have a lot to discuss." The tension in the air was palpable as we gathered around the table, Uncle Hal's false bravado doing little to mask the unease that radiated from him. It was as if he could sense the trap closing in, but his arrogance blinded him to the truth. "So, what's this all about?" he asked, flashing that smarmy grin that had once charmed so many. "I thought we were here for a nice family dinner." I exchanged a glance with Mom, our resolve steeled by the mountain of evidence we had amassed. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally confront the man who had betrayed us all. "We know what you've been doing, Hal," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "The embezzlement, the shady investments, the lavish spending, it all stops now." Uncle Hal's face contorted into a mask of feigned confusion, his eyes darting between us like a cornered animal seeking an escape. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lenore. This is preposterous." Mom slid a thick file across the table, the damning paperwork spilling out like a twisted confetti of deceit. "We have proof, Hal. Bank statements, investment portfolios, receipts, all documenting your every move." For a brief moment, Uncle Hal's composure faltered, his mask of indignation slipping ever so slightly. But he quickly regained his footing, his lips curling into a sneer of contempt. "So what? You think you can just accuse me and expect me to roll over?" He spat, his voice dripping with venom. "This is my family's money, and I'll do with it as I see fit." The sheer audacity of his words hit me like a physical blow, the depth of his selfishness and entitlement laying bare for all to see. In that moment, any lingering shred of familial loyalty evaporated, replaced by a burning desire for justice. How dare you? I fired back, my hands balling into fists at my sides. That money was never yours to take. It was meant to secure our future, our legacy, and you've been systematically dismantling it for your own personal gain. Uncle Hal's face twisted into a sneer of contempt, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure hatred. You ungrateful little brat, he snarled. After everything I've done for this family, this is how you repay me? The air seemed to crackle with tension as our voices escalated, the once civil dinner devolving into a bitter showdown of wills. Accusations flew back and forth, each one more scathing than the last, until finally, Uncle Hal's mask of control shattered completely. You want to know the truth? He spat, his voice dripping with venom. I did it all for you, for this pathetic excuse of a family. Everything I've done was to keep us afloat, to maintain the lifestyle we deserve. The sheer audacity of his words left me reeling, the depths of his delusion and self-justification laying bare for all to see. In that moment, I knew there was no reasoning with him, no shred of remorse or redemption to be found. As the din of our confrontation echoed through the room, I caught sight of Gregor's ashen face, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and sorrow. It was then that I realized the true cost of Uncle Hal's betrayal. The rift it had torn through our once close-knit family, the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. But even in the midst of that turmoil, a single thought burned bright within me. Uncle Hal would pay for his actions, no matter what it took. The wheels of justice had been set in motion, and there would be no turning back. The fallout from our explosive confrontation with Uncle Hal was swift and severe. In the days that followed, word of his betrayal spread like wildfire through our small town, igniting a firestorm of gossip and judgment. Some rallied behind us, offering words of support and condemning Uncle Hal's actions. Others, however, remained steadfastly loyal to him, clinging to the facade of success he had so carefully cultivated over the years. How could he do this to his own family? Aunt Peggy lamented, her eyes brimming with tears. After everything we've been through together. Uncle Hal's younger brother, Todd, was less forgiving. That snake always had a talent for charming his way into people's wallets, he spat, his voice laced with contempt. I just never thought he'd stoop so low as to steal from his own blood. As the divisions within our family deepened, the strain became palpable. Thanksgiving dinners were boycotted, Christmas gatherings canceled, the once unbreakable bonds of kinship fraying under the weight of Uncle Hal's deceit. Through it all, I remained resolute, steeling myself against the onslaught of whispers and sideways glances that seemed to follow me wherever I went. The sympathizers, the enablers, the holier-than-thou busybodies who couldn't resist sticking their noses where they didn't belong. Their judgments rolled off me like water off a duck's back. My focus was singular, ensuring Uncle Hal faced the consequences of his actions, no matter what it took. Mom, bless her, was my rock through it all. Don't let them get to you, honey, she'd say, wrapping her arm around me in a reassuring embrace. We're doing the right thing, and that's all that matters. Still, the strain of the whole ordeal began to take its toll. Sleepless nights plagued me, my mind racing with scenarios, contingency plans, and worst-case outcomes. I found myself jumping at every unexpected sound, my nerves frayed to their breaking point. Then, one crisp autumn morning, everything changed. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the silence like a knife, jolting me from a fitful slumber. Gregor's gruff voice crackled through the line, his tone laced with urgency. Lenore, you need to get over here. Now. Without a moment's hesitation, I threw on whatever clothes were within reach and raced over to Gregor's house, my heart pounding in my chest. What I found there would forever alter the course of our quest for justice. Gregor ushered me inside, his face ashen and drawn. It's Hal, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He's gone too far this time. In the living room, a scene of utter chaos greeted me. Furniture lay overturned, picture frames shattered, and in the midst of it all, a chilling message scrawled across the wall in what appeared to be red paint. You'll regret this, you ungrateful brats. A chill ran down my spine as I took in the words, their menacing implications hanging heavy in the air. Uncle Hal had crossed a line, and in that moment, I knew there would be no turning back. As I surveyed the wreckage, a steely resolve settled over me. Uncle Hal had made his move, and now it was our turn to strike back. The gloves were off, and the stakes had just been raised. This was no longer about recouping financial losses. It was about protecting our family, our dignity, and our very lives. Uncle Hal had declared war, and we would answer his challenge with everything we had. The chilling message scrawled across Gregor's wall was a stark reminder that Uncle Hal's depravity knew no bounds. But rather than cowering in fear, it only fueled my determination to bring him to justice, no matter the cost. As Mom and I huddled with Gregor, formulating our next move, a plan began to take shape, a bold, audacious gambit that would require precision timing and nerves of steel. "We need to catch him in the act," I said, my voice low and resolute. "Get him to incriminate himself in a way that can't be denied or twisted." Gregor nodded slowly, his brow furrowed in contemplation. "A sting operation of sorts?" "Exactly," I replied, the pieces falling into place. "We'll lure him in with the promise of a deal, make him think he's getting away with it all. But this time, we'll be the ones holding the cards." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, dotting every I and crossing every T to ensure our plan was airtight. We enlisted the help of a trusted private investigator, arranging for state-of-the-art recording equipment to be installed in Gregor's living room, the very scene of Uncle Hal's unhinged outburst. Finally, the stage was set. A carefully worded message was sent to Uncle Hal, inviting him over to discuss a resolution to our familial conflict. The bait was laid, and all we could do was wait with bated breath. The appointed hour arrived, and with it, the sound of Uncle Hal's car pulling into the driveway. My heart pounded in my chest as Mom and I took our positions, tucked away in the adjacent study with the investigator, monitoring the live audio feed. Uncle Hal sauntered in, his usual cocky swagger on full display. "All right, I'm here," he announced, casting a disdainful glance around the room. "What's this all about?" Gregor cleared his throat, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "Hal, we've been talking, and we think it's time to put all this ugliness behind us." A derisive snort escaped Uncle Hal's lips. "Is that so? And what, pray tell, did you have in mind?" "A settlement," Gregor replied, his words measured and deliberate. "A clean slate, if you will. You return what you've taken, and we can move forward as a family again." A tense silence hung in the air as Uncle Hal mulled over the offer, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Finally, he let out a low chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. "You really think it's that simple, old man?" he sneered. "That I'd just hand over everything I've worked for, all because you and your ungrateful brats threw a little temper tantrum?" The venom in his words was palpable, his true colors shining through like a neon sign. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the opportunity to catch him in his own web of lies and deceit. "We have proof, Hal," Gregor pressed, his voice steady and unwavering. "Reams of evidence documenting your every move. It's over." Uncle Hal's face contorted into a mask of rage, his composure shattering like a fragile glass. "You stupid old fool," he snarled. "Did you really think you could outsmart me? I've been running circles around you for years." The confession poured forth in a torrent of vitriol, each word more damning than the last. Uncle Hal laid bare the intricate schemes he had woven, the lengths he had gone to fleece our family of our hard-earned legacy. And through it all, the recording captured every sordid detail, preserving his unraveling for posterity. As his tirade finally wound down, Uncle Hal's chest heaved with exertion, his eyes wild and unfocused. It was then that the realization seemed to dawn on him. The trap had been sprung, and he was well and truly caught. A sickly pallor crept across his features as Gregor fixed him with a steely glare. "It's all on tape, Hal," he said, his voice laced with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. Every last word. In that moment, the full weight of Uncle Hal's downfall seemed to crash down upon him, the consequences of his greed and hubris finally catching up to him in spectacular fashion. And as Mom and I emerged from our hiding place, united in our resolve, one thing became abundantly clear. The tides had turned, and justice was finally within our grasp. The incriminating evidence we had gathered, coupled with Uncle Hal's own damning confession, was a devastating blow. But the battle was far from over. We knew that in order to truly achieve justice, we would need to confront him head-on, lay bare his misdeeds for the entire family to witness. And so, with steely determination, we prepared for the ultimate showdown. Gregor, ever the master strategist, devised a plan to lure Uncle Hal to a seemingly innocuous family dinner under the guise of clearing the air. Little did the serpent know we had something far more explosive in store. The appointed evening arrived, and as the rest of our extended family filtered into Gregor's home, the air was thick with tension. Hushed whispers and sideways glances betrayed the undercurrent of suspicion and mistrust that had taken root in the wake of Uncle Hal's transgressions. And then, like a darkened cloud rolling in, he made his entrance, all bravado and false smiles, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. "Ah, there's my loving family," he crowed, spreading his arms wide in a mockery of affection. "I'm so glad we could all come together and put this ugliness behind us." I fought back the urge to spit in his face, my hands clenching into tight fists at my sides. The audacity of the man to waltz in as if he hadn't just been caught red-handed in his own web of lies and deceit. But I held my tongue, exchanging a knowing glance with Mom and Gregor. The time for talk was over. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the chance to expose Uncle Hal's true colors for all to see. As the meal progressed, the tension in the room grew thicker by the minute. Uncle Hal regaled us with story after story, each one more grandiose than the last, his false charm oozing from every pore. It was sickening to watch, this master manipulator at work, and yet the knowledge that his downfall was imminent made it all the more bearable. Finally, as the plates were cleared and the last drops of wine drained from our glasses, Gregor rose to his feet, his gaze fixed squarely on Uncle Hal. "Well, now that we're all here, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. Uncle Hal's bravado faltered for a brief moment, a flicker of unease passing across his features. But he quickly recovered, plastering on that smarmy grin that had once charmed so many. Of course," he replied, waving a dismissive hand. "Let's get it all out in the open, shall we?" Little did he know, we were about to blow his world wide open. With a single nod, Gregor signaled to me, and I reached into my bag, retrieving the damning audio recording that would seal Uncle Hal's fate. As the opening bars of his own voice filled the room, spewing forth a vile litany of confessions and admissions of guilt, a hush fell over the gathered family. Shock and disbelief etched itself onto their faces as the full extent of Uncle Hal's betrayal unfolded before them. And through it all, Uncle Hal remained frozen in place, his complexion growing paler with every passing second as the noose of justice tightened around his neck. When the final damning words had played out, a deafening silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of Uncle Hal's ragged breathing. "Well, Hal?" Gregor's voice cut through the stillness like a knife. "Anything to add?" For once in his miserable life, Uncle Hal seemed well and truly speechless, his mask of control shattered beyond repair. As the weight of his crimes bore down upon him, his eyes darted around the room, desperately seeking an ally, a sympathetic face, but found none. The family that had once rallied behind him had finally seen the truth, and there was no turning back. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of vindication wash over me. The man who had so callously betrayed our trust, our loyalty, our very livelihood, was finally being held accountable. And as the shock and horror gave way to a chorus of condemnation from our gathered loved ones, one thing became abundantly clear. Uncle Hal's reign of deceit and manipulation had finally come to an end. Justice, at long last, had been served. In the aftermath of Uncle Hal's spectacular downfall, a strange calm settled over our family. The storm of anger and betrayal had finally passed, leaving in its wake a sense of resolution and a renewed determination to pick up the pieces and move forward. Of course, the legal ramifications were swift and severe. Uncle Hal found himself facing a litany of charges, from embezzlement and fraud to grand larceny. His once charmed life came crashing down around him, his ill-gotten gains seized and his reputation in tatters. As for the financial restitution, Uncle Hal was forced to liquidate every asset he had acquired through his deceitful schemes. Every last penny was meticulously accounted for and returned to its rightful place, the family's legacy, the inheritance he had so callously plundered. It was a bittersweet victory, to be sure. While the relief of having our hard-earned legacy restored was palpable, the pain of Uncle Hal's betrayal still cut deep. The trust that had once bound our family together had been shattered, and the road to healing would be a long and arduous one. But heal we did, slowly but surely. Gregor, ever the wise patriarch, took the first steps by relinquishing control of the family's finances to a team of professional advisors and trustees. No longer would the temptation of unchecked power lead someone down the path of greed and corruption. "I failed you all," he admitted, his voice heavy with remorse. "I let my pride blind me to the truth, and for that I am deeply sorry." It was a humbling moment, one that resonated deeply with all of us who had been caught in Uncle Hal's web of deception. We had all been guilty of blind trust, of believing that blood ties were thicker than the lure of easy money. But from that collective pain came a hard-won lesson, a renewed commitment to vigilance, to accountability, and to the unwavering pursuit of truth, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable. As for me, the entire ordeal had opened my eyes to a harsh reality, that even those closest to us are capable of unimaginable acts of selfishness and cruelty. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one that ultimately steeled my resolve and sharpened my instincts. In the months that followed, I found myself drawn to the world of financial literacy and advocacy. I saw firsthand how a lack of education and transparency could pave the way for exploitation, and I was determined to do my part in shedding light on these issues. It started small, with workshops and seminars aimed at empowering individuals to take control of their financial futures. But as word spread of my own harrowing experience, the demand for my expertise grew. Before long, I found myself speaking at conferences and events across the country, sharing my story and imparting the hard-won lessons I had learned. It was a calling I had never expected, but one that filled me with a sense of purpose and redemption. And through it all, my family remained by my side, a united front forged in the crucible of Uncle Hal's betrayal. We had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. As I looked back on the tumultuous journey that had brought us to this point, one thing became abundantly clear. While the path to justice had been fraught with pain and heartbreak, the ultimate victory was worth every struggle. Uncle Hal's downfall had not only restored our financial legacy, but had ignited a fire within each of us, a burning desire to live with integrity, to hold ourselves and those around us accountable, and to never again allow the insidious forces of greed and deception to take root. It was a hard-won triumph, but one that would echo through the generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of truth, perseverance, and the unbreakable bonds of family. During a sun-drenched afternoon, the aroma of sizzling burgers filled the backyard as our family gathered for a casual barbecue. I watched as my brother Miles doted on his fiancée, Cora, serving her a plate of food with a besotted grin. Although beautiful and charming on the surface, something about Cora's calculating gaze unsettled me. "So, Lena," Cora said, her perfectly manicured fingers toying with the stem of her wine glass, "Miles mentioned you're a tutor at the community college." I tensed, sensing the subtle condescension in her tone. "Yes, I find it incredibly rewarding to help students unlock their full potential." Cora's scarlet lips curved into a patronizing smile. "How quaint. I can't imagine settling for such a modest career, but I suppose not everyone has ambition." My jaw clenched as Miles shot me an apologetic glance, oblivious to the true extent of Cora's disdain. I forced a polite smile, determined not to cause a scene at our family gathering. Later, as I helped Mom clear the dishes, she leaned in close. "Cora seems a bit intense, doesn't she?" I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm just worried Miles might be rushing into this. They've only been together for a few months." Mom's brow furrowed with concern. "You don't think she's after our family's money, do you?" Before I could respond, Miles strode into the kitchen, his arm draped possessively around Cora's waist. "There are my two favorite ladies. What are you whispering about?" Cora flashed her dazzling smile, but I noticed the calculation behind her eyes. "Oh, just girl talk." As the evening wound down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Cora's true motives extended far beyond love and commitment. Her snide remarks hinted at a deep disdain for anyone or anything she deemed beneath her. And for some reason, I feared my brother had become her latest target. In the weeks following the barbecue, my unease around Cora only intensified. I noticed peculiar charges appearing on the family business accounts. expensive jewelry, designer clothes, even a deposit for a lavish destination wedding venue. When I questioned Miles about it, he brushed it off, insisting Cora was just getting settled into her new role managing our finances. "She's brilliant with numbers, Lena," he said dreamily. "I've never felt more confident leaving that side of things to someone else." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't add up. How could this near stranger have earned such blind trust so quickly? One evening, I stopped by Miles' apartment unannounced, hoping to catch Cora off guard. She opened the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate makeup striking for that late hour. "Lena, what a surprise," she purred, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Miles isn't home from the office yet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." I pushed past her into the living room, unfazed by her narrowed eyes. "I've noticed some irregular expenses on the business accounts you're managing." Cora's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "Oh? Like what?" I listed off the suspicious charges: designer clothes, lavish vacations, even personal care services that seemed wildly excessive. "Care to explain what our family's hard-earned money is being spent on?" For a moment her mask slipped, revealing a flash of anger. But just as quickly, the placid smile returned. "Lena, darling, you worry too much. Can't a woman treat herself occasionally?" She trailed a finger along my arm, her voice taking on a sickly sweet tone. "Why don't you find yourself a nice man and leave the business matters to me?" I jerked away from her touch, repulsed. "I don't trust you, Cora, and I won't stop until I expose whatever game you're playing." Her smile turned frigid. "You'd be wise to mind your own business. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to your beloved community college, now would you?" The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as I stormed out, more convinced than ever that Cora's intentions were sinister. If Miles refused to see the truth, I'd have to take matters into my own hands, for the sake of our family. After my confrontation with Cora, I knew I needed to dig deeper into her background. Miles was too blinded by love to see the truth, so it was up to me to expose her for who she really was before it was too late. I spent sleepless nights scouring the internet, searching for any clues about Cora's past relationships or financial dealings. What I uncovered was a trail of wealthy men she had dated briefly before unexpectedly cutting ties and moving on to her next target. Posing as a prospective client, I even contacted a few of Cora's former romantic interests. The stories they told painted a disturbing picture, one of manipulation, deceit, and a ruthless pursuit of money and status. "She love-bombed me at first," one man confided over the phone, his voice laced with bitterness. "Showered me with attention, made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world, but as soon as I signed over power of attorney, she drained my accounts and disappeared." Another disclosed how Cora had pressured him into an accelerated wedding timeline, only to call it off at the last minute and walk away with the non-refundable deposits. With each new revelation, my determination to stop Cora grew stronger. She was clearly a master of deception, and Miles was headed down the same tragic path as her previous victims if I didn't intervene. Meanwhile, Cora's schemes showed no signs of slowing down. She insisted on hosting an over-the-top engagement party, under the guise of celebrating their love, but likely as another opportunity to flaunt her illicit wealth. "We simply must have it at the Grand Pavilion Ballroom," she gushed to Miles one evening when I stopped by unannounced. "It's the most exclusive venue in town." Miles beamed, utterly captivated. "Of course, my love, whatever you desire." She caught my skeptical gaze and smirked. "Lena, you're welcome to come as well, if you can find something suitable to wear from the community college's bargain bin." I bit back the urge to slap that smug grin off her face, reminding myself that confrontation would only cause Miles to further retreat into her web of lies. As I left, Cora's parting words cut like a knife. "I'd watch your back if I were you. You never know when something might slip through the cracks." Her vague threats only strengthened my resolve. If Cora thought she could bully me into submission, she was sorely mistaken. This was war, and I wouldn't rest until I reclaimed my brother from her toxic clutches. As the days ticked down to the engagement party, Cora's manipulation tactics intensified. She paid a visit to my parents, batting her long lashes as she spun an elaborate tale about investing in a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that required a hefty cash infusion. It would secure all of our futures, she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. But we'll need your financial support to make it happen. My heart sank as I watched my normally sharp-witted parents get ensnared in Cora's deceitful web. Dad nodded enthusiastically, smitten by her charm offensive, while Mom wrung her hands with concern. I'm not sure we have that kind of money readily available, she fretted. Cora's smile remained plastered on, but her eyes flashed with impatience. Surely you could liquidate some assets or take out a loan against the family business? Miles and I would pay you back tenfold once this deal goes through. Before they could respond, I burst into the living room, unable to stay silent any longer. Don't do it. She's lying to you, to all of us. Cora whirled toward me, her expression contorting into a venomous glare. How dare you barge in here and make such accusations? Because it's the truth. I shot back, my voice rising with pent-up frustration. I know all about your history of scamming wealthy men, Cora. You're nothing but a con artist. For the first time, real panic flickered across her features as she struggled to regain her composure. She's delusional, Cora sputtered, turning to my stunned parents. Lena's just bitter and jealous that her own life lacks purpose or direction. My fists clenched at my sides as Mom gaped at us, utterly bewildered. Dad's expression hardened as he considered Cora's deceptively innocent demeanor. Is this true, Lena? He asked gruffly. Because if you're making outlandish claims with no proof, that's a line I won't tolerate. I took a deep, steadying breath. I have proof. Lots of it. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the dossier I'd compiled. Bank statements, testimonies from Cora's former flames, even a nugget about a prior arrest for financial fraud that had been expunged. Cora paled as I slammed the stack of papers on the coffee table with a thud. Her green eyes, so adept at feigning warmth, now blazed with undisguised hatred. You'll regret this, she hissed through gritted teeth. I leveled her with an icy glare. No, Cora. You're the one who's going to regret ever messing with my family. With that vow lingering in the tense silence, I turned on my heel and stormed out, my mind already formulating a plan to put a stop to Cora's twisted games once and for all. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Cora, I wasted no time coordinating my next move. I knew her vindictive nature meant she would likely retaliate, so I had to strike first and decisively. I gathered a small group of trusted relatives, my Uncle Jack, Cousin Emma, and Miles's childhood best friend, Alex. After swearing them to secrecy, I laid out the incriminating evidence I'd compiled on Cora. This woman is out to bleed our family dry, I declared, sliding copies of the dossier across the table. We need to expose her lies at the engagement party before she has a chance to make her next play. Uncle Jack stroked his graying beard, eyes narrowed in contemplation. I always had a bad feeling about that one. Count me in. Emma and Alex exchanged a loaded glance before nodding in solemn agreement. With my covert team assembled, we began mapping out an airtight plan of attack. Meanwhile, Cora continued flaunting her false persona, leveraging Miles's family connections to further her own agenda. I cringed as she sidled up to unsuspecting relatives at a lunch gathering, batting her lashes and spinning grandiose tales about her supposed business ventures. We're diversifying into high-end real estate development, she gushed, clinging to Miles' arm with an adoring smile. It's such an exciting opportunity. Miles beamed, utterly enthralled, as the others offered congratulations and well wishes. Only my dad regarded Cora with a measure of skepticism after my damning revelations. As the party drew nearer, tensions mounted. Cora caught me leaving the house one afternoon, her eyes glittering with unveiled malice. I know what you're up to, she hissed, strutting toward me with fists clenched. You and your pathetic little crew can try to take me down, but I'll bury you all. I refused to flinch, squaring my shoulders as I met her venomous glare. I'm not afraid of you, Cora. It's over. A cruel smile curved her painted lips. We'll see about that. The night before the party, my phone pinged with an ominous text from an unknown number. Give it up, or you'll lose everything. Attached was a photo of the community college where I taught, the implication clear. I shuddered, but my resolve didn't waver. Cora had upped the stakes, but she had no idea what I was capable of to protect my family. Tomorrow would be her ultimate reckoning. The Grand Pavilion ballroom glistened with opulence, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the lavish floral arrangements and white linen tables. But beneath the glamorous facade, An undercurrent of tension rippled through the air. Cora swept into the venue on Miles's arm, resplendent in a slinky emerald gown that left little to the imagination. Her smug smile faltered infinitesimally when she spotted our covert team stationed at strategic points around the room. "Tonight will be a night to remember," she purred into Miles's ear, tightening her grip on his bicep. "Just wait until you hear the announcement I have planned." As guests mingled and fawned over the extravagant affair, I caught Emma's eye and gave an imperceptible nod. It was time to spring our trap. The first subtle strike came as Uncle Jack engaged Cora in conversation, steering her toward a quiet corner with a few polite compliments. "Your dress is exquisite," he remarked, his grandfatherly demeanor utterly disarming. "It must have cost a small fortune, just like this entire party, I'd wager." Cora preened under the faux praise. "Why, thank you, Jack. Miles and I spare no expense when it comes to the finer things." Of course. Although I must admit, I was surprised when Lena told me about your unconventional business dealings." He hissed softly, watching her face contort with the first flicker of unease. "Fraud, extortion, swindling wealthy bachelors out of their fortunes. It's all a bit unsavory, wouldn't you agree?" Cora's mouth dropped open, but before she could respond, Emma sidled up with a conspiratorial grin. "Oh, Aunt Cora, you simply must meet my friend Claire," she chirped, gesturing toward the sour-faced woman at her side. "She's dying to share her experience dating you a few years back." As Claire launched into a diatribe about the thousands Cora had conned out of her, I watched the blood drain from the cunning schemer's face. Nearby, Alex began questioning Miles about the astronomical party costs, while casually mentioning his concerns over Cora's misuse of funds. Within minutes, a hush fell over the ballroom as Cora's panicked gaze flickered between the damning witnesses closing in from every angle. "Miles, honey, you have to believe me," she began, her voice wavering. But it was my turn to strike the final blow. I stepped forward, folders of irrefutable proof clutched in my hands. "Everyone, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake," I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This party is a sham. A ruse intended to distract us all from the truth about Cora's despicable intentions." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Cora paled, frozen in the spotlight of scrutiny. "I have evidence," I declared, fanning out the incriminating documents with a flourish. Bank statements, legal records, testimonials, all laying out Cora's long history of defrauding and manipulating people for her own nefarious gain. Our relatives rallied behind me, bolstering my words with a chorus of condemnation aimed at the now-exposed charlatan. Cora's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, her facade of confidence utterly shattered. In that moment, it was evident that her reign of terror had finally, deservedly, come to an ignominious end. As the weight of the evidence crushed down on her, Cora's composure rapidly unraveled. Her perfectly coiffed demeanor disintegrated into a frantic, wide-eyed panic. "Miles, darling, you can't possibly believe these ridiculous lies," she cried, grasping his arm with claw-like desperation. "It's all a big misunderstanding." But the hurt and betrayal etched on Miles's face spoke volumes. Slowly, reluctantly, the veil of infatuation lifted, as he absorbed the damning testimonies and paper trail detailing Cora's web of deceit. "How could you?" he rasped, anguish lacing his words as he wrenched free of her grip. "You used me, my family, for your own selfish gain?" Cora opened her mouth, but no coherent defense emerged, only a strangled whimper as the stark reality crashed down upon her. She was finished, exposed for the callous con artist she truly was. As the stunned silence stretched on, Dad stepped forward, his expression grave. "I think it's time you left, Miss Jennings, and I'd advise against any further contact with my family." The use of her full name seemed to jolt Cora from her stupor. With a last desperate pivot, she swept a hand through her perfectly coiffed tresses and attempted a tremulous pout. "Please, I never meant for things to go this far," she simpered, sickly sweet. "I fell so deeply in love with Miles that I lost my way for a bit, but I'm willing to make amends, do anything to prove my devotion." Miles recoiled as if struck, his jaw tightening with righteous indignation. "Save it. I don't want to hear another word from you." His cold dismissal seemed to finally pierce Cora's delusional armor. Her attempts at manipulation collapsed entirely as bitter fury contorted her delicate features into an ugly sneer. "You'll regret this," she spat in my direction, green eyes blazing with visceral hatred. All of you. But her vitriolic threats rang hollow against the wall of familial solidarity that had rallied against her depravity. We stood united, an impenetrable front that her malice could never breach. With a last contemptuous glare, Cora gathered the tattered shreds of her dignity and stormed out, the click of her designer heels fading into blessed silence. Gradually, the tension in the room dissipated as the truth of Cora's treachery sank in. Miles remained still as a statue, absorbing the emotional fallout, until Mom enveloped him in a comforting embrace. "It's going to be all right, sweetie," she murmured, stroking his hair with maternal tenderness. "We're here for you." Tears glistened in his eyes as he clung to her, finally allowing the anguish to flood forth. But even in his heartbreak, a glimmer of hope shone through. The knowledge that he had us, his stalwart family, to help guide him through the wreckage. As I watched my brother's agonizing journey towards healing begin, I felt a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was over, and justice had prevailed through the strength of our unbreakable bonds. 6 months later, the dark cloud of Cora's duplicity had fully lifted from our family. The business was thriving once again under Miles and my joint leadership, and the strained bonds that her twisted schemes had frayed were healing steadily. I smiled as I watched Miles pore over financial reports at his desk, a crease of concentration furrowing his brow. Gone was the love-struck naivete that had blinded him to Cora's true nature. In its place was a wiser, more grounded man who had learned the value of vigilance the hard way. "Lena, can you come take a look at these projections for next quarter?" he called out, glancing up with a warm smile. "I want to make sure I'm not missing anything." As I rounded the desk to stand at his side, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how far he'd come. In the aftermath of Cora's exposure, Miles had thrown himself wholeheartedly into restoring the family business, determined to atone for the mistakes and vulnerabilities that had nearly spelled our ruin. "Everything looks solid to me," I assured him, scanning the spreadsheet with a practiced eye. "Though I think we could afford to be a bit more aggressive with the marketing budget for that new product line." Miles nodded thoughtfully, jotting down a note. "You're probably right. I trust your instincts." The easy camaraderie and mutual respect between us was a far cry from the strained tensions of months past. Cora's deception had shaken Miles to his core, but rather than retreat inward, he had emerged more committed than ever to upholding the values of honesty and integrity that were the bedrock of our family legacy. Over dinner that evening, conversation flowed as freely as the wine, our raucous laughter filling the air in a way it hadn't for far too long. "Remember when Cora tried to pass off that ratty old fur as a vintage Revlon?" Emma cackled, nearly spilling her drink as she dissolved into a fresh gale of mirth. An impish grin tugged at Miles' lips as he shook his head ruefully. "God, I can't believe how thoroughly she had me fooled. I'm just grateful you all saw through her act before it was too late." Mom reached across the table to give his hand a tender squeeze. "What matters is that you opened your eyes in the end, honey. We're just glad to have you back." As the night wound down and our boisterous clan gradually dispersed, I found myself alone on the back patio, gazing up at the twinkling canopy of stars. So much had changed, and yet in many ways we had emerged stronger, a family united by the indestructible bonds of loyalty and truth. In that tranquil moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and resolution wash over me. We had weathered Cora's storm of malice and emerged battle-tested but whole. And though the scars might never fully fade, our perseverance and love for one another would forever be the blazing beacon to guide us through any darkness that dared encroach on our lives again. During a seemingly innocuous family dinner, the conversation flowed as usual, my husband Todd discussing his work at the insurance firm, our teenage son Aaron rambling about his latest video game obsession. That's when I noticed Todd's demeanor shift, his eyes darting furtively as he excused himself from the table, whispering into his phone in the hallway. "Sarah, I promise, we'll start fresh soon. Just be patient a little longer." My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of his words sank in. "Sarah?" A chill ran down my spine as Todd returned, his expression carefully composed, as if nothing had transpired. Doubts resurfaced. The late nights at the office, the unexplained charges on our credit cards. I had suppressed them, convincing myself that his dedication to providing for our family was paramount. That night, as Todd slept soundly beside me, my mind raced, dissecting every interaction, every half-truth that had once seemed innocuous. How could the man I had sacrificed so much for, the one for whom I had put my own career aspirations on hold, betray me in this way? The following morning, I feigned normalcy, my accountant's mind already formulating a plan. If Todd thought he could deceive me, the woman who had meticulously managed our finances for decades, he was sorely mistaken. I would unravel this web of lies, one thread at a time. Poring over our banking statements, I noticed suspicious patterns. Lavish purchases, withdrawals, and transfers that defied explanation. Each discrepancy fueled my determination, hardening my resolve to expose the truth, no matter how painful. As the days passed, my investigation intensified. I scoured credit card statements, cross-referenced receipts, and flagged every anomaly. The evidence mounted, and with it my sense of betrayal deepened. One evening, while Todd was supposedly working late, I followed a lead to an upscale apartment complex. There, in the dimly lit parking lot, I caught a glimpse of him embracing a younger woman, their bodies intertwined in a passionate kiss. My heart shattered as the realization hit me. My husband, the man I had devoted my life to, had been living a lie. The evidence of Todd's betrayal lay scattered across my office desk. Bank statements, credit card receipts, all pointing to a hidden life he had so carefully concealed. As an accountant, I prided myself on my meticulous attention to detail, but even I had been blind to the glaring discrepancies in our finances. "What's all this?" Todd's voice startled me as he entered the room, his brow furrowed in confusion. I straightened my back, marshalling every ounce of courage. "Care to explain these charges at the Grand Lux Hotel, or the monthly payments to an apartment downtown?" Todd's face paled as he glanced at the incriminating paperwork. "Marlene, it's not what you think. Don't insult my intelligence," I spat, fury coursing through my veins. "I know about Sarah. I saw you with her." A heavy silence hung in the air as Todd struggled to formulate a response. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging in resignation. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." "It just happened?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been living a double life, betraying me and our family with your lies and infidelity." Todd's eyes pleaded with me, but I had no sympathy left to offer. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But we can work through this, I swear." I let out a bitter laugh. "Work through this? After you squandered our hard-earned savings on your mistress, lavished her with gifts while I scrimped and saved to make ends meet?" Rage contorted his features as he lashed out. "You think it was easy, living with a woman so consumed by her work, always crunching numbers, never having time for me?" His words stung, but I refused to let him shift the blame. "That's no excuse for what you've done. I sacrificed my own ambitions to support your career, and this is how you repay me?" Todd's head dropped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm sorry, Marlene, I've made a mess of everything." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I said coldly, gathering the damning evidence. "Not anymore." As I brushed past him, our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw the depth of his regret. But it was too little, too late. The man I had loved, the one I had trusted implicitly, was nothing more than a stranger cloaked in deceit. I knew then that there was no turning back. The scales had fallen from my eyes, and I would stop at nothing to regain what was rightfully mine: my dignity, my independence, and my future. In the days following my confrontation with Todd, a heavy pall hung over our once happy home. The warmth and laughter that had once filled its walls were now replaced by a suffocating silence, punctuated only by the occasional heated exchange. "I want a divorce," I stated flatly one evening, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. Todd's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious, Marlene, after everything we've been through?" "You did this?" I shot back, gesturing to the emptiness that now surrounded us. "Your lies, your betrayal, they destroyed our marriage." He shook his head vehemently. "We can work it out. I'll do anything. Just don't throw away our family like this." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The damage had been done, and the trust that had once bound us together lay in tatters. I knew, deep down, that there was no salvaging what remained of our broken union. Stealing my nerves, I contacted a divorce lawyer, a formidable woman named Rachel, who promised to fight for my fair share. As we pored over the financial records, a clearer picture of Todd's deception emerged. Lavish gifts, exotic vacations, all funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated her like a queen while I struggled to make ends meet, I confided in Rachel, my voice thick with emotion. Her eyes narrowed with determination. We'll make sure he pays for every penny, Marlene. This is just the beginning. True to her word, Rachel guided me through the labyrinth of legal proceedings, ensuring that every asset, every hidden account was laid bare. With each revelation, I felt a twisted sense of vindication, knowing that Todd's carefully constructed facade was crumbling around him. Yet, even as the evidence mounted, a part of me still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved. The charming, devoted husband who had promised to cherish me forever. How could someone I had trusted so implicitly have become such a stranger? In my darkest moments, I found solace in the company of my closest friend, Jenna. Over countless cups of coffee, she listened patiently as I poured out my pain, my anger, and my doubts. "You're doing the right thing, Marlene," she would reassure me, her warm embrace offering a brief respite from the storm that raged within. "He doesn't deserve your loyalty after what he's done." Her words, though harsh, rang true. Todd had shattered the sacred vows that had once bound us, and there was no turning back. As the divorce proceedings gained momentum, I could feel the weight of his betrayal slowly lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. I would emerge from this ordeal stronger, wiser, and above all, unbroken. The road ahead might be long and uncertain, but I knew that with each step I was reclaiming the life that had once been so callously stolen from me. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of Todd's betrayal seemed to bear down on me more heavily with each passing moment. Despite the support of my dear friend Jenna, I found myself drowning in a sea of doubt and anger, struggling to make sense of the life I had once known. It was during one of our coffee dates that Jenna broached a subject I had been too afraid to confront. "Have you considered hiring a private investigator?" she asked gently, her eyes filled with concern. I recoiled at the suggestion, my mind immediately conjuring up images of seedy detectives and sordid affairs laid bare. "I'm not sure I want to know any more than I already do." Jenna reached across the table, her warm hand enveloping mine. "Marlene, you deserve the truth, all of it. Isn't it better to have the facts than to be haunted by uncertainty?" Her words struck a chord, and I knew she was right. As painful as it might be, I needed to uncover the full extent of Todd's betrayal, to finally shed light on the secrets he had kept hidden for so long. With Jenna's help, I tracked down a reputable private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Samantha, who promised to handle my case with discretion and professionalism. "Just tell me what you need, and I'll get to the bottom of it," she assured me during our initial consultation. I steeled myself, listing off the details I had uncovered: the mysterious apartment, the unexplained charges, and the elusive woman named Sarah. Samantha nodded, her keen eyes taking in every detail. "Leave it to me," she said with a confident nod. True to her word, within a matter of days, Samantha had unearthed a trove of damning evidence. Surveillance photos captured Todd's clandestine meetings with a woman identified as Clarice, a younger, stunning brunette who appeared to be his mistress. "He's been lavishing her with gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, all paid for with your money," Samantha reported grimly, sliding a stack of incriminating receipts across the table. As I pored over the evidence, my hands trembled with a potent mix of rage and heartbreak. This Clarice was no mere fling. Todd had been leading an entire double life, one funded by the very savings I had worked so tirelessly to build. "That bastard," I spat, hot tears of anger stinging my eyes. "He's going to pay for every single lie." Samantha's expression hardened with determination. "We'll make sure of it. This is just the beginning." With the truth laid bare before me, I felt a newfound sense of resolve coursing through my veins. No longer would I be the naive, trusting wife, blindly following the path laid out for me. This time, I would be the one calling the shots, and Todd would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. Armed with the damning evidence gathered by Samantha, I felt a newfound determination coursing through my veins. It was time to confront Todd and his mistress head-on, to strip away the veil of lies that had shrouded our lives for far too long. With Jenna by my side for moral support, we made our way to the upscale apartment complex where Clarice resided. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and trepidation as we approached the sleek glass doors, the weight of what I was about to do bearing down on me. "Are you sure about this, Marlene?" Jenna asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. No more running, no more hiding. Jenna gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and together we stepped inside. The ride up to Clarice's floor was agonizingly slow, each passing second fueling the fire burning within me. When the elevator doors finally opened, I strode down the plush hallway with purpose, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to the inevitable confrontation. I rapped sharply on the door, my knuckles stinging from the force of my blows. Moments later, it swung open, revealing a startled Clarice clad in a silk robe, her perfectly coiffed hair mussed from what was undoubtedly a passionate tryst with my husband. "Marlene?" she gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you doing here?" Before I could respond, Todd appeared behind her, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Marlene, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I spat, shoving past Clarice and into the lavish apartment. "I know everything, the lies, the affairs, the money you've been funneling to support your little mistress here." Clarice's mouth fell open in outrage. "How dare you barge in here and make accusations? Todd loves me and we're going to be together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Is that what he told you? That he'd leave his wife and family for a pretty little thing like you?" Todd stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Marlene, please, let's discuss this like adults." "Oh, we're well past discussion," I snarled, reaching into my purse and retrieving the stack of evidence Samantha had provided. "I have proof of every sordid detail. The secret apartment, the lavish gifts, all paid for with money that should have gone to supporting our family." As I brandished the damning photos and receipts, Todd's face drained of color. Clarice, too, appeared shaken, her confident facade crumbling as the truth laid bare. "You've been using me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Todd's gaze darted between us, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It's not like that, Clarice. I never meant to hurt either of you." But his words fell on deaf ears. The betrayal ran too deep, the wounds too raw to be soothed by empty platitudes. "Save your lies for someone who still believes them," I spat, turning on my heel and storming towards the door. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." As I swept out of the apartment, Jenna hurrying to keep pace beside me, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. The shackles of deceit had been broken, and for the first time in months I could breathe freely. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but I was ready to face it head-on. Todd's misdeeds had been laid bare, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. No more hiding, no more lies. The reckoning had begun. In the aftermath of my explosive confrontation with Todd and Clarice, a sense of grim determination settled over me. I had laid bare the truth of his deceit, and now it was time to make him pay. Not just for the lies, but for every penny he had squandered on his sordid affairs. With Rachel, my formidable divorce lawyer, by my side, we set about meticulously documenting every financial betrayal, every hidden transaction that had drained our accounts over the years. The evidence was damning, a paper trail of excess and greed that left no room for doubt. As we prepared to file the divorce papers, Rachel turned to me, her steely gaze unwavering. "We're not just going after a settlement here, Marlene. We're going to bury him." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I knew she was right. Todd's actions had gone far beyond the bounds of a simple infidelity. He had systematically looted our hard-earned savings, betraying the very foundation of trust upon which our marriage had been built. When the news of our impending divorce hit the headlines, the fallout was swift and merciless. Todd's once pristine reputation as a respected insurance agent lay in tatters, his clients fleeing in droves as the sordid details of his affairs came to light. How could we have trusted him with our policies when he couldn't even keep his own house in order? One former client lamented to the press. As Todd's professional life crumbled around him, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching him reap the consequences of his actions. No more hiding behind a facade of respectability. The world now knew him for the liar and cheat he truly was. But my revenge didn't stop there. With Rachel's guidance, I dug deeper into Todd's financial dealings, uncovering a tangled web of shady investments and ethical breaches that threatened to strip him of his insurance license altogether. He's been playing fast and loose with client funds for years, Rachel revealed, her expression grim, using their premiums to fund his lavish lifestyle and pay off his mistresses. The evidence was irrefutable, and before long, the governing board had no choice but to revoke Todd's license, effectively ending his career in disgrace. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, each court appearance became a public spectacle, with Todd's sordid misdeeds laid bare for all to see. I watched with a strange sense of detachment as he squirmed under the weight of his own lies, his once cocky demeanor replaced by a pathetic whimpering as he begged for leniency. But I was unmoved. He had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it, alone, disgraced, and utterly ruined. In the end, the settlement was a mere formality. I had already taken back what was most precious, my dignity, my independence, and the knowledge that I had emerged from this ordeal a stronger, more resilient woman. As I watched Todd slink away from the courthouse, his head bowed in shame, I felt a strange sense of pity for the broken man he had become. But that pity was quickly overshadowed by a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over, and I was free to start anew, unburdened by the weight of his betrayal. As the dust settled from the explosive divorce proceedings, I could scarcely recognize the man who had once been my husband. Todd's world had come crashing down around him, and the once cocky insurance agent was now a mere shadow of his former self. "This isn't over, Marlene," he snarled during one of our final court appearances, his eyes burning with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You haven't seen the last of me." But his threats rang hollow, a feeble attempt to cling to the illusion of power he had once wielded. The truth was laid bare. He was a disgraced shell of a man, his reputation in tatters, his finances in ruin. With each passing day, new revelations emerged, painting a picture of a man consumed by greed and deceit. It seemed that Clarice had been merely the tip of the iceberg, with evidence surfacing of multiple affairs spanning years, each mistress lavished with expensive gifts and exotic vacations funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated them like queens while I scraped by, pinching every penny, I confided to Jenna over coffee, my hands trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jenna's expression hardened, her usual warmth replaced by a steely resolve. "He's going to pay for every single lie, Marlene. We'll make sure of it." True to her word, Jenna became my fiercest ally, standing by my side as we methodically dismantled every aspect of Todd's carefully constructed facade. With the help of Rachel and her team of investigators, we uncovered a tangled web of financial misdeeds that went far beyond simple infidelity. It seemed that Todd had been using client funds to bankroll his lavish lifestyle, siphoning off premiums and investment returns to fuel his insatiable appetite for excess. The evidence was damning, and before long, the governing bodies had no choice but to take action. "Mr. Wilkins, in light of the overwhelming evidence of ethical breaches and financial misconduct, we have no choice but to revoke your insurance license, effective immediately," the stern-faced judge declared, her gavel punctuating the finality of her words. As Todd slumped in his seat, his face ashen, I felt a strange sense of vindication wash over me. This was the true cost of his betrayal. Not just the loss of his marriage and family, but the complete and utter annihilation of everything he had worked for. In the weeks that followed, word of Todd's downfall spread like wildfire, his once respectable name becoming a byword for duplicity and greed. Former clients and colleagues turned their backs on him, their expressions a mix of disgust and pity for the man who had so thoroughly disgraced himself. I always knew there was something off about him. One former colleague remarked to the press, shaking his head in disbelief, but I never imagined the depths of his depravity. Through it all, Todd maintained a stoic silence, his once boisterous personality replaced by a sullen, withdrawn demeanor. It was as if the weight of his misdeeds had finally crushed him, leaving behind a hollow shell of a man. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served, that the man who had so callously betrayed me had finally reaped the consequences of his actions. It was a small victory, to be sure, but one that filled me with a newfound sense of strength and resolve. The road ahead might still be long and uncertain, but for the first time, in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of hope on the horizon. A chance to rebuild, to start anew, and to reclaim the life that had once been so cruelly stolen from me. The day my divorce from Todd was finally finalized, I expected to feel a sense of relief, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Instead, as I stood outside the courthouse, the crisp autumn breeze whipping through my hair, I was overcome by a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, and a profound sense of loss. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter in my life that had once held so much promise. The dreams Todd and I had shared, the future we had so carefully planned, all of it now reduced to a stack of legal documents and a judge's solemn pronouncement. "Are you okay?" Jenna's gentle voice broke through my reverie as she approached, her warm hand finding mine in a comforting embrace. I forced a smile, blinking back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "I'll be fine. It's just a lot to process." Jenna nodded in understanding, her own eyes shimmering with a mixture of sympathy and pride. "You've been through hell, Marlene, but you came out on the other side stronger than ever." Her words struck a chord within me, and I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The nights spent poring over financial records, the countless hours spent strategizing with Rachel, the confrontations with Todd and his mistresses. Each step had been a crucible, forging me into a woman I scarcely recognized. Gone was the naive, trusting wife who had so blindly followed the path laid out before her. In her place stood a woman tempered by the fires of betrayal, a warrior who had stared down the ugliest depths of human deceit and emerged victorious. As I looked back on the wreckage of my former life, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. The pain, the heartbreak, the rage, it had all been worth it, for it had revealed a strength within me that I never knew existed. "You're right, Jenna," I said, squeezing her hand in gratitude. "I am stronger now, and I have all of you to thank for that." A warm smile spread across her face, and in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, I would never be alone. The bonds forged in the fires of this ordeal were unbreakable, a sisterhood born of shared struggle and unwavering support. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself slowly but surely reclaiming the pieces of the life that had been shattered by Todd's betrayal. With the financial settlement secured, I was finally able to breathe freely, unburdened by the weight of his deceit. Bit by bit, I began to rebuild, exploring new interests and rekindling long-forgotten passions. The accounting firm I had once abandoned in pursuit of Todd's dreams welcomed me back with open arms, and I found myself relishing the familiar rhythm of crunching numbers and analyzing spreadsheets. But even as I immersed myself in work, a part of me yearned for something more. A connection. A chance to open my heart once again to the possibility of love and companionship. It was during a chance encounter at a local coffee shop that I met him. A kind-eyed stranger whose warm smile and easy laughter immediately put me at ease. As we fell into easy conversation, I found myself captivated by his gentle spirit and unwavering integrity, qualities that had been so sorely lacking in my previous relationship. Slowly, cautiously, I began to let my guard down, allowing myself to be vulnerable in a way I hadn't been in years. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that this time I would walk it with my eyes wide open, my heart fortified by the lessons of the past. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a future unfurling before me, one filled with promise and possibility. The shadows of Todd's betrayal still lingered, but they no longer held the power to consume me. I was free at last to embrace the life I had so longed for, a life lived on my own terms, guided by the unwavering strength that had carried me through the darkest of times. And as I stepped forward into the unknown, I did so with a renewed sense of purpose, my head held high and my spirit unbroken.